Hello and welcome to the mill. I am your host, Dusty Crane, and this week I wanted to kind of go over one of the configurations for the modular board, but I also wanted to talk about the last game-a-side that I played, and this is actually the two hexes, or the two tiles that I laid out on the game board, and I believe the factions are exactly the same, but that's not really important to what I wanted to talk about. I also want to do a first few turns video, but I wanted to first address kind of this board state of this particular game of the modular board. In this game that we played, I have a lot of public information showing. Ignore that. It's just because we're doing this video here. I played Polania in this particular game, and this was my area, and I know for a fact that we were playing against Rusviet here. Nordic is kind of the wild card. I don't for certain remember if that was the faction or not, but that's really not important. What I really found interesting about this makeup, and I know some people are going to think that this is a negative thing and that this is why, some of the concerns about balance in the modular board, this might kind of bear out their theory, because let's take a look at these starting situations. Polania here, I've got access to 4 territories, and it's, grain, and I have access to wood and iron and, a village. And that's a pretty good starting territory. Now, Rusviet over here, for their part, they've got grain and iron and a village. They got to kind of get to it a little bit. They have an encounter token. I have an encounter token over here with Polania. But let's look at, in this case, this Nordic player right here in the middle, what they have access to, like right out the gate. We have access to this oil and an encounter, a village, a forest for wood. We have oil again over here, a village, and another encounter token. And they can walk right up into the factory. Some people, this is going to drive nuts. And I can understand it, I suppose, but this is what I like about the puzzle of Scythe. I don't like these pre-programmed things. I know I've said that a bunch of times on the show. I like that this particular modular board, I love the thought process that goes into how do I make the most out of what I have, and it's very, very, very evident in the modular board. Now, I will tell you right off the get-go here, I am not the most competitive Scythe player. I wouldn't even say I'm necessarily a good Scythe player. If you're coming to me for tutorials, unless I've specifically said it's a strategy video, I don't know. Maybe there's definitely better videos, definitely better BGG blogs that you can read for that, but I am a fan of the game, and I am going to talk to you about this thing that I love so much. And hopefully that's what you're here for. But yeah, so let's talk about this Nordic thing here. Now, I am a terrible Nordic player, but you cannot tell me that if this was the board configuration for your 2-player game or 3-player game, and you decided to just use the 2 tiles, that you would not be snatching up Nordic, no matter how many times you've lost with them, because you think that this might be the time that you can grasp victory from the jaws of defeat. And I think you might genuinely have a case based on this opening board set. Now, like I said, I don't see this as a negative. I know some people will, especially even the starting zones here between Polania having 4, Rusviet having 3, and then obviously Nordic. What do we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I mean, they can get all the way across the board if they wanted to. I guess I counted where you can't see, but they can, basically climb all the way back up to the north side of the board. And I just found that, like, I saw this configuration and I laughed, but it was like a joyful, like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And so that's where I am. Here's another thing I wanted to bring up, though, because these are absolutely the two objective cards I had. So this first one is send one back as a warning. So have at least 7 power and complete a move action to send someone back. You know, go into a worker space, opponent's worker, and send them back. You know, have at least 7 power, objective complete. Now this one is another one where I think some people might balk at the modular board, and I don't remember reading in that rule book that how this is addressed, whether you house rule it, but let's just go ahead and cut to the chase here. Harvest advantage. Now what this one says is control at least 3 farm territories at the end of your turn. Now, here's why that's a problem. You can't see the north side of the board up here, but I'll tell you it's iron, oil, village, and then we're into areas you can kind of see here as a mountain, and now we've got the factory. So the village territories, there's 2. It is impossible to control 3 farm territories, especially at least 3 farm territories. So I don't know if this is a situation where you'd say, you know what, go ahead and just draw a different objective card. That's perfectly reasonable, and it may actually be in the rule book. Like I said, I didn't consult before doing this video, and I didn't. How we handled it in the game was just I looked at my other card and I thought I can definitely, you know, get that knocked out. So I just said, no, I'm fine with my objective cards. I didn't say anything, but it just kind of got the gears spinning for what I wanted to talk about this week. So those were the couple of, let's say, oddities that kind of popped up with this modular board. But again, I don't consider it a bad thing. I really like that puzzle. But let's go ahead and get to the first few turns, because, I mean, at this point, I've already kind of given my opinion to the modular board. I just, you know, presented a few more things that some people might not like, but nevertheless, I think is a cool puzzle aspect to the game. So first few turns here, because we were playing with what I kind of consider a little bit, I want to say zany, but understand that I'm not saying it negative at all. I feel like I need to keep saying that, because it sounds like if you are, you know, some people are so very hung up on balance in every single faction and every single, you know, starting territory needs to be in balance, and then I can understand how these things would bother you. They don't for me. So I just feel like whenever I make a observation, it could also sound like a critique, and that's not what I'm getting at. That's not what I'm here to do. It's just not something I enjoy. But because we were playing with, like I said, what I lovingly call zany, I went ahead and we played with the full-on scythe encounters, because those are kind of zany too. So we went full bore on, let's see how wild and crazy our game of Scythe can get. And it was a really fun game. I did not win this game, but I had a very good time. So let's go ahead and start with first few turns here for Polania. And these were, well, I'm sure the first 2 were probably my first 2 turns, but the first one I would do is I'm going to go ahead and do a trade. I am going to pay a coin, and I am going to go ahead and trade for 2 oil. And you know what? That starting guide is still in my head, you know, all this time later, that I want to take a bottom row action by my second turn if I can. So I'm kind of setting the table for that. I'm trading 2 oil in my first turn. It's going to cost me a coin, but that's me setting up my next turn. All right, for turn 2, I am going to go ahead and move. I'm going to go ahead and move Anna closer to that objective there, and I am going to go ahead and take my oil and my worker here to the village to, again, kind of set the table for my next turn. I think you're always thinking ahead. You should be. So that is the first half of it. I do also have my 2 oil, so I'm going to pay those 2 oil, and I'm going to go ahead and do an upgrade. I'm going to get that coin back that I just spent, and I think I'm going to have to be doing some moving here on this board, and I need to make my upgrade or my deploy cheaper. And so that is what I'm going to do. Now turn three here, of my options here on the board, I'm going to go ahead and produce. I'm going to go ahead and start getting some workers out. I want to get some guys over here to the mountain to start producing a mech, probably as soon as I can. So I'm going to go ahead and produce, and that is going to produce 1 wheat and 1 worker. And unfortunately, that is all I can do for this turn. Now, if I wasn't going to move into this encounter territory, I think what I might do for my next turn is actually do a trade action again. So when I do move, I can go ahead and use that oil. But, Polania has this meander ability and can pick, 2 options on the encounter cards. And so I'm going to hope that with these 2 options, I will have an option to get a couple oil, so that's not a wasted bottom row action, or that I didn't get a bottom row action that I could have. So for my next turn, so turn 4, I'd go ahead and do a move, and in this case I would move I really don't have 3 to move, but I'm anticipating having more soon. So I can only produce on 2. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and leave him there for 1 more produce action. In this case, even though I did a move and upgraded it to 3, I'm going to go ahead and just move Anna. And I'm going to go ahead and take this encounter. And let's go ahead and see what the Scythe Encounters deck has before I wrap this up for us here. So, for this card, it says... keep this card without reading it out loud if you choose this option. At the end of the game, for each farm you control, gain 3 coins. Holy moly. Okay, so this is definitely not planned. But so at most, this card at the end is worth $6. On a normal board of Scythe, I don't know how many more. I should have looked at that. If I'm looking at the other tiles across, I'm still looking at like 1 or 2. So I mean, there's 4. Maybe 5. So definitely has the potential to be worth more, but that's one option. Buy the man's fancy mechanical legs. Pay $3 to keep this card. You may discard it at the end of the future turn to immediately take another turn, or steal the stilts. Pay 2 popularity to keep this card. Your character has +1 range. Wow. Wow. +1 range. I mean, that's a speed mech, right? I mean, that's the +1. That says movement. I am not going to get my oil from this card here. But so I definitely don't. I have 2 popularity to spend. So keeping the stilts and having a +1 range. I mean, right now I'm landlocked, but I mean that could help me, possibly get to the factory sooner, or even if I don't want the factory. Although, another aspect and another avenue of this modular board to consider is the fact that there's not as much area to move to, right? I mean, there is an advantage to being able to get to where you need to go faster, but is it as critical when you have a reduced tile set like that? I don't know, but pay 3 coins to keep this card. You may discard it at the future to take another turn. So I definitely think that I would take that option for sure, to give me an extra turn. That could give me an opportunity to spread out a little bit. The question is whether I would keep this card for it. Possibility. I mean, realistically, $3 at the end of the game. Now, I've certainly lost games by 3 coins before, so that's not a bad option. Aren't you so glad that you were not sitting at the table with me trying to figure this out? But let's just go ahead and pardon me. Let's just go ahead and we're going to pay the 2 popularity. We're going to take the range. You can't see the popularity anyway, so I won't bother to knock that down. But that would leave me there. Can't take my bottom row action. That's 4 turns. It's a little more than a few, but yeah, I hope this video was, you know, something a little different. You actually see some, you know, active gameplay situations, some alternative board states. It really is going to be a personal decision whether or not you think it's a bad thing or not. I personally, after having played with the regular board as many times, this is a very welcome addition to my Legendary box. And I'd be really interested in hearing if you know, if something like this would really, I guess, be an adverse situation for you guys. If you think there was, obviously I think there's definitely a case where one faction has the greater advantage, and that's definitely Nordic. The question is whether or not you think the abilities that, you know, the other ones that are on the board in here in terms of Polania would be able to, you know, make it worthwhile. Because Nordic, their abilities, their workers can swim, right? Well, do they really? They don't want to walk into Rusviet's territory and pick a fight right away, do they? They don't want to probably walk into Polania's home base and pick a fight. So they're kind of, their special ability is kind of rendered moot in this case because they're not traveling across, you know, lakes. So yeah, for me, like I said, I love the puzzle of it, but I totally understand, you know, the flip side too. I'm curious, in this particular game setup, I had, let's see here, my mat was patriotic. I do remember that the Rusviet board was agricultural. Do you think out of these 3 territories, I guess I wish I remembered what that middle one was, but is there one that you would for sure take? Or am I completely out of line in saying that Nordic was kind of like, that would be the faction to take? I'd be interested to know how you would have played the first few turns different for Polania, or maybe even, like I said, if you have a board game in front of you, or the board's in front of you, Rusviet Agricultural, how you might have played those first few turns might be cool too. But in any case, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you had a great week. I hope you have a great week coming forward. As always, please take care of each other, and I will see you again next week. Take care.